Right, beautiful. Hello, Amy. I am so grateful to be able to sit down and chat with you and learn a little bit about you and your medicine. Also tap into some of your experiential wisdom, some of the lessons you learned along the way. But before we dive into all of that, I'd love for you to just introduce yourself, let the people know who you are, where you're located, and the modalities that you work with.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for setting this up. This is a really nice opportunity to connect and, share more with the Maha Rose community.
Yeah.
So, my name is Amy Schimel, and I live in Brooklyn, New York. I do tarot reading. I teach a tarot workshop, so
Hmm.
teaching people how to read tarot. It's generally people who are beginners.
Mm.
Um, you know, some have a little more experience, but it's open to all levels. And I'm a Reiki practitioner at the master level.
Okay.
I was trained by Levine, Maha Rose,
Hmm.
and I'm also a flower essence therapist. My teacher was Lindsay Fauntleroy.
Mm.
Um, some people may know her.
Beautiful. And I'm so curious, especially with tarot. I'm not sure about your upbringing, but a little bit about my background. I grew up very Christian, very like, that was a big no, 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 no. And I'll never forget one day I was at work and I just felt this like strong urge to go to I don't know if you're familiar with what is this place? It's a big, big spiritual bookstore in Union Square.
Namaste.
Yes, namaste.
Yeah, yeah.
I was like, I'm gonna go there. I'm just gonna look. I'm not gonna buy anything. I'm just gonna look, and I looked and I bought my first set of Oracle cards. I know it's a little bit different than tarot, but that was
Yeah.
like really like my first like kind of introduction into like working with cards. So I'm just curious, like, what was it
Mhm.
about tarot for you that like drew you into that path?
Um, I've just always been interested in like mystical
Mm,
things. I also grew up Christian, so I don't know, I had a connection to like prayer and
mm,
I don't know, like a certain amount of like magic about prayer.
yeah, yeah.
And I started getting tarot readings after I moved to New York in my 20s. And I just always found anything like psychic or mystical, completely fascinating and
Mm.
was always like totally on board. So it just took me a while. And I also bought my first deck at Namaste,
Ah.
my first Rider Waite deck. And
Mm.
yeah, just bought some books and looked at a lot of other readers on YouTube
Mm.
and just, I don't know, did just so much self-study because I was
Mm.
so into it. It really wasn't like didn't feel like study to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, yeah, so that's how I got into it.
I love that. What was your first tarot reading like? I don't know why. I'm just really curious to hear about that.
My gosh. I probably started with like more of like a psychic reading,
Mm.
and then I don't even know what my first tarot reading was. Um, I honestly don't know because it's been years. But it just evolved. And
Hmm.
now I think tarot is much more available. Like I can remember back in my 20s, if I wanted like a psychic reading, it was
Hmm.
pretty pretty hard to like find somebody, in your price range who you felt like you could trust.
Yeah.
It's just evolved so much now that I love that like so many places offer
Mm.
it's just more available to people.
Yeah, yeah. What would you say someone who's interested in getting into tarot, what would be like your advice for them on like how to approach tarot? Because I think sometimes tarot kind of gets this like kind of dark shield over it. It's like, ooh, if you get the
Yeah,
death card, if you get that card, and like, oh, so like, what would you kind of say
yeah.
to keep people's like just mind open around tapping into tarot medicine?
Um, I would say that it's very important that you get some traditional teaching around it, whether it's from a book
Mm.
or, someplace like, I know that I got some information when I went to Namaste. They suggested, well, why don't you start off with this book, and
Mm.
um, it's also very important to protect your readings with some sort of positive affirmation or
Mm.
prayer. I would say that that's very important from the get-go,
Yeah.
Um, and then I think once you start learning about it, you're very quickly going to realize there's nothing to be worried about,
Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And also
Mm.
curious, what book was that you, or if you have any recommendations for books?
I do. I have the first one is 78 degrees of can't remember. Rachel, oh my gosh, I can't remember. Maybe we can like put the
Yeah, we can
information.
look that up and put into the show notes.
Yeah,
Hmm.
Rachel Pollack, that's her name.
Okay. Rachel Pollack.
Yeah. That was a really deep um dive into sort of the origins of like the traditional meanings and
Oh.
um it was took me a while to get through it, but I had to go back to it like several times. And then there
Mm.
are other books that I can recommend that are just maybe a little bit easier for beginners when you're just starting, to connect with the cards, and maybe
Okay.
start with the major arcana cards, learn those first.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know. And then I think honestly that like just a lot of my learning overlapped with like flower essence studies
Mm.
because there's just the healing world is based on ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
So the more I dove into that and learned about it, it's just supported uh the basis of tarot, because
Okay.
that's also um based on a lot of different traditions of
Mm.
knowledge.
Mm. So like in your tarot sessions, you're pulling in also like wisdom from like flower medicine, flower flower
Uh,
medicine.
well, just how well, the way that I was taught uh, to do flower essence therapy is to work with the element, the Chinese seasons, the acupuncture,
Mm.
Chinese
Okay.
medicine, the seasons, which relates to the elements, for
Yeah.
instance. And so getting to know those different seasons, you're really going to get to know, um, you can do corresponding to the elements, which we all know tarot has the wands, the
Hmm.
swords, cups, those relate to the four elements.
Yeah.
So just a lot of overlapping information. And honestly, that's just the more I learn on my healing journey, the more different modalities I sort of tap into, like just
Mm.
learned about like shamanic um, medicine, and they all kind of come from like a similar uh
Kind of like origin.
um yeah, like a
Hmm.
destination,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
and then people just have their very specific different ways of reaching that destination.
Hmm.
I don't know, it's nice how it kind of like all comes together instead of being, I feel like that's the path that we're going now. Like there were all
Yeah.
these separate, there's Hinduism, there's um Buddhism, shamanism,
Yeah.
flower essence therapy, Reiki, but I don't know. I just feel like more and more everything's just sort of coming under one umbrella in some way.
Hmm.
Like, no, I don't mean any disrespect to all the intricacies of each
Right.
system.
Hmm.
But I do feel like people are understanding how they're not so separate.
Yes. Yes. I totally hear what you're saying, and I feel like we, as in those of us who are who feel called to kind of, to devote ourselves to a spiritual path, and active service, to our community and to the world around us. I feel like we're the ones kind of like bridging that gap. We're like, "Ooh, I want to learn about this. Ooh, I want to learn about that. Ooh, I want to learn about that." And then we're like, "Oh, actually, like you said, there are these similarities
Yeah.
that I'm finding between these three different modalities, which traditionally probably would not have been practiced all together,
Yeah.
right?" So yeah, I definitely feel that as well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Um, I love it.
Yeah, yeah. I
Yeah.
think, it also has a lot to do with that, like, what do they say that we're in? The information era, or the whatever that saying is, where we just have access to information like through the internet, because you can just Google it now. You're like, oh, shamanism. What's that? You know,
Exactly. I
like,
know. Isn't it
yeah.
insane? It's
Hmm.
insane. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So you do,
And
oh no, go ahead.
no, you go. Go ahead.
I was going to say, you do have to, it brought me back to what you had shared earlier with the tarot practice of, like, really grounding your practice in prayer.
Mm.
And I feel the same way when you could go to start
Hmm.
accessing some of these platforms and channels and all the things, like,
Hmm.
really, that's where I feel like your intuition is like, okay, really allow yourself to lean into, like, okay, I feel like I'm maybe going down a rabbit hole that I don't need to necessarily be in right now. Let me just kind of
Yeah.
get out of here.
Reel it back in. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, just in knowing, I've been rereading Women Who Run with the Wolves. And I read the
Yes.
Vasilisa story, and it has a lot to do with like being initiated into your intuition. And one of the things that the Baba Yaga told
Mm.
Vasilisa was that too much information can make a soul old quick. And so
Mm.
that really
Hmm.
like stood out to me, because it's like, yeah, you
Hmm.
really, I think, us in this instant gratification kind of era, it's like you do want to just have all the answers and know right now and what's it going to be and how's it going to be and how long
Mm.
is it going to take. And something about that line really stood out to me of like, yeah, sometimes knowing too much of that too soon can really actually be
Hmm.
more of a disservice than it can
Hmm.
be to our benefit. So I think, yeah, just it's like, even though we have access to everything for the most part, it's like also, it's a great tool to learn how to how to how to lean into your intuition too.
Yeah, and because I'll just add on to that too, that uh everything's actually like there are no answers. Like it's
Mm,
everything's a mystery really, or it's based on a mystery, right? And that's
mm,
sort of what makes it magical.
mm.
We don't really know how things work, you know, like exactly, you
Yeah,
know. And I don't think we're meant to.
yeah.
So you just hold the mystery, which is like
Mm,
working with like your trust and your faith and um, your intuition and
yeah.
being connected to your inner true self as much as
Mm,
possible. Um, yeah, I would say that those are like even like more important.
yeah, yeah. Because I think we can get, this is something I have to remind myself too. It's like these are just tools to help us harness,
Yeah.
our intuitive guidance. And so if we become
Hmm.
too dependent on it, like you were saying, like
Yeah.
expecting them to give us the answers, then that
Yes.
creates a disharmony with the relationship with the tools.
Yeah.
So I love that. And I'm also curious too, because I know, we were chatting a little bit earlier, you have a background in fashion, and I'm
Hmm.
so curious, like, for you, when you were really being called into this path of spirituality, like, what was that like for you, kind of closing that chapter of your life?
Oh, it was not easy.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
Um, well, the fashion, for me, my business started slowing down sort of naturally with changes in the industry.
Mm,
I, of course, was not ready to let it go, even though, it's tough. Like it's a very tough industry, like
yeah.
so there were times, of course, where I felt tired, but it was my identity, like being a
Mm,
creative person, and I absolutely adore working with ideas and my hands and
hmm.
fabric and color and all that stuff. Um, but I had to face the facts that, the industry had changed and I wasn't really equipped to like keep up with it, like um branding became very important.
Mm.
And stores just really wanted you to like be your own brand. So once I just sort of accepted that, I was in the holding pattern, I would say, for like 10 years.
Wow.
I also have I have a daughter, so I was busy. I could also busy myself with all the parenting things, and it also was
Hmm.
a little bit of a relief to have a break where I wasn't like juggling so hard.
Yeah.
But it was really interesting because it was during that time I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. Tried to change directions within fashion, like just doing it through trunk shows and that sort of thing. And
Mm.
it just worked for a little bit, but it was never really going to sustain me, like
Yeah.
especially like financially. But and then I don't know, I just started getting these little taps, like about doing something more meaningful.
Mm.
I do feel like fashion could be meaningful. I did feel like I had a calling to like a lot of people say this, like bring joy to people.
Yeah.
But something was tapping me definitely at the same time, saying like, hey, pay attention, get more into yoga, do more meditating.
Mm.
Um, I went off on a track. Am I answering your question at this
No, you
point?
are. You are. You are.
Okay. Yeah, so the transition was slow and it was painful because it was
Hmm.
really like a identity crisis. And um, also I just feel like there's a lot of like, or for me, there was a lot of like questioning about, is this real? Like,
Hmm.
can I trust this? I don't know. I didn't really have any friends that were doing it. So I was
Yeah.
just kind of like going out on a limb. But luckily, I had heard about Maha Rose. I was like, okay, well, there is this place I can go. And so I
Hmm.
started going there and like just, you know, taking some classes here and
Yeah.
there. And then really solidified it for me when I took my Reiki one there. Um,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow. And then that started your transition to doing offerings and really doing it as
Yeah.
a profession.
Yeah, except it took me a while. I really felt like I needed to develop it and
Hmm.
I didn't rush into it. I probably could have gone faster, but I was still like getting used to the whole big change. And um, but eventually, after I completed my Reiki Masters and at the same time was studying the flower essence, I realized I really did want to offer. That really was like my calling, and I
Hmm.
really did want to offer whatever I could, whatever, I trusted more in
Yeah.
spirit and I trusted more the messages that I was getting. And it was a journey.
Yeah. 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 I love what you shared about just learning to trust the taps, you know. 'Cause I felt like
Mm.
I went through a very similar process of like my background's also in fashion and I was feeling called
Hmm.
to leave fashion as well. I was just like I just kind of woke up one day. Well, I actually listened to a podcast that had a energy healer on there and just the way that she was describing her life, I was like, well, what is she doing that I'm not doing? Because I'm sitting here working two jobs. Like what? Like, hold a second. Like, I could be doing that over there, living like that. And so that's
Mm.
initially what got me, started on my path. Um, but similar, I felt like I feel like I can be doing something more. And I just felt like where I was in that moment of my life, like that it just wasn't it, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
But it took me a while too to kind of trust that like the spirituality, intuition, like what is this? And as I'm rereading Women Who Run with the Wolves, it's it saddens me a bit that we have that skepticism when it comes to leaning into our intuition because we just
Hmm.
as not even as human beings but as women especially like it's
Hmm.
literally like just not passed down to us. And
Yeah.
so we tend to trust outside people, resources, places, things, because we just don't
Hmm.
have that skill set of like really honing in and tuning into our intuitive guidance. So look, my question that came up for you when you, as you were transitioning, you said, you said this your fashion, this was your identity. You've been doing it for so long. Like, just
Hmm.
curious, like, what was supporting you to really start to like just kind of slowly make those steps into the transition? Like, was it just having a more community of people who are also navigating that space, or was there like spiritual practice? Like, were you just really like diving deep into the tarot and the flower essences to support you? I'm just
Hmm.
kind of curious, like how you were holding that one foot in, one foot out kind of
Yeah.
duality.
Well, I forgot to mention that this podcast, like you said, you had a podcast too, just came into my life. I remember I started to begin, I hope this isn't too much information, but I started
No.
to begin to go to be like premenopausal. And so I had
Mm,
like all these like oh, nights where I was like awake for hours, And so
mm,
I don't know, I found this podcast at some point when I was like dabbling on Facebook, like just passing the hours. And it was so good. And the I just have to try to think what the name of it is. It's called Positive Head.
mm,
And the creator, I had discovered it just as it was sort of beginning. And so it was like I was going on a journey with him. Do you know what I mean? Like
mm,
he'd been spiritual his whole life, and he was just so totally confident um in his spirituality.
mm,
And he just had so much wisdom. He was such a truly authentic person. And he had like amazing guests on, and that really was so supportive. I was like, anything that I was ever remotely interested in, like they
mm,
covered and more, like obviously things I'd
mm,
never like heard about. And so that was um, really great for me. And it just encouraged me to start doing like actual meditation,
mm.
instead of just at for a couple minutes when I go to yoga or something,
Yeah.
you know. So that really encouraged me to do that. And I looked into, the best ways that I, felt called to meditate. There were so many
Mm,
different ways. I didn't really go into like a very specific system,
mm-hmm.
but that seemed to work. And I kind of, sorry, it's my cat.
No worries.
I kind of, why? I kind of feel like that was sort of my path. Like that was
Mm,
sort of that I'm not really meant to be super specific with like one particular branch of
mm,
spirituality.
mm-hmm.
And yeah, so that's just sort of how it came together. And then, yeah,
Mm,
like I said, there was Maha Rose, there were some yoga classes here and
yeah.
there. Um, yeah. Oh, and then there was this other thing too. I forgot to mention that
Yeah.
my daughter was going to this Waldorf school. I don't know if you ever heard of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So they had classes. They offered like some classes for parents, and it would be like a discussion about like Rudolf Steiner. Do
Mm.
you know anything about him? Very
No.
fascinating. Oh, totally fascinating. He was a mystic, and he's like the founder of the philosophy for Waldorf schools, and
Wow.
he invented um, farming. I can't. What is it? Oh my gosh, I can't think of the.
I feel like I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. That people are really using today,
Mm-hmm.
as better methods for the soil, and
Mm-hmm.
rotating crops and like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, he was fascinating. So anyway, I did take some courses, so I got to start to get some like actual knowledge,
Okay.
and everything just kind of like happened at once. I feel like all those
Mm.
things kind of were happening at once.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know, I guess that was just the magic soup, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm hearing. It's just like you just kept following the nuggets, the little
Yeah,
breadcrumbs that were being placed along your path, and then it just all began to come into place and to click.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Hmm. Yeah.
yeah.
Which also goes back to our point that we made earlier of uh what was it? Around like not expecting to get all the answers or not expecting,
Hmm.
to have everything right now before you start to and even engage in your intuition or follow this other path that could be that's calling to you. It's really that's that self-trust of like, okay, I'm just gonna take this one step or take this class or go to this yoga and just see
Yeah,
what happens. So I think
yeah,
that's beautiful. And I'm also
yeah.
curious, what's your sign? What's your
I'm a
is there
Gemini.
a Gemini? Okay. I felt like
Yeah.
there was some air energy.
Oh yeah, undeniable. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I feel like we're like that. We're like, let's just dab a little bit of here, a little bit of there, and we just make it all make sense.
Oh, that's so true. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you're an air sign
Yeah, I'm
as
an
well.
Aquarius. Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I totally resonate with what you shared.
Yeah.
And so okay, so I'd love to tap in a little bit about or a little bit around your tarot sessions. So if I were to book a
Okay.
session with you,
Hmm.
what are some things I could expect? What would I need to like prepare for the session or yeah.
No, there's no preparing. It's just come as you are.
Okay.
And when I open the session,
Mm,
if we're doing, um, well, I also offer a Tuesday tarot walk-in
okay.
space every Tuesday from 3:30 to 5:30 at Maha Rose. And those are 30-minute sessions. I mean, you could take
Mm,
an hour if you wanted, but if you're going to book me individually for a tarot reading,
mm-hmm.
it'll be 60 minutes. But
Okay.
anyway, so either way, I'm going to ask you, what your goal is.
Mm,
Do you have like very specific questions? Sometimes you feel like very specific questions. They tend to be about um, career, finances, or love,
mm-hmm.
but not always. And then some people, like this is how I was, I would often just want to know, like, would just want to I would just want somebody to read me. Like, I would just
Yeah.
want to know more about myself or something.
Mm,
So I offer them, both of those opportunities, whichever one resonates with them.
mm,
And then we just begin because once you open the space
mm-hmm.
and you pull some cards, it just
It just starts
goes
to
from there,
unfold. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm. Has there been a session that's like, and I'm asking you this because I typically find that when I'm in session with clients, I feel like I learn just as much about myself through whatever it is, like through their insights,
Yeah.
through their aha moments. And I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, that's powerful. Like I'm gonna take that. I'm gonna
Yeah.
borrow that,
Hmm.
you know? So I'm curious for
Yeah.
you, like, has there been a session for you that's just been like, wow, that session, like, that really hit me?
Um, Often it'll just be, I often just find that I have like so much love for us,
Mm, mm-hmm,
and I'll just be like, I'll, often it'll just be like, well, I just have so much compassion for us,
mm,
like life is not easy,
yeah.
they're all, no matter what your circumstances are. And then the other thing that I often take away though is just like a lot of like pride with my clients. Like I'll just be like, wow, you really accomplished this. I can see that you made some big decisions
Mm,
and made some big changes in your life. I'll be able to see through the cards, there have been some, something that the person was going through and that they've made some big changes. And I just really love that. I'm just like so happy
yeah.
that, people are making positive moves forward to better their lives, to understand themselves better,
Mm,
to open up to more possibilities, more opportunities, more self-love,
yeah.
love in general.
Yeah.
I would say that's generally like the best that I get from the sessions.
Mm, I
Yeah.
love that. That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what's on your horizons for as we close out 2024 and start to very soon head into 2025, which
Mhm.
is so
I
wild
know. Yeah.
that that is just basically a month away.
Yeah. I know. It's this time of year is so intense, you know.
Hmm.
Um, well, I feel recently like I've learned to to discern when it's good to like step back a little bit.
Mm.
I at the beginning of my, developing my practices, I was very intense
Mm.
about it. Just, worrying, like, am I reaching people? Is this working? Like that, all that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. And now I feel like I'm moving more into a little bit of like, oh, well, don't forget to take care of yourself and um, trust, a constant reminder just
Mm.
to do your sessions, whatever they are, whether they're Reiki or flower essence therapy or tarot, that you're just really working, you're co-creating with spirit, and
Mm.
whatever has gotten you to this point, whatever relationship you have with spirit that's gotten you to this point is what's sustaining you. And to not trust that would doesn't make sense at this point. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So I like to come back to that a lot. And yeah, so I really want to enter 2025 with just even more like self-trust,
Yeah.
and I want to create even more community. I just want to reach out to more people,
Mm.
create new like healer friendships or
Yeah.
healer groups or something where we support each other. I really enjoy coming together with other healers.
Mm.
Um, and just it's going to be a lot, 2025 on so many levels. And yeah, we have to like pace ourselves,
Mm.
so that's sort of where I'm at right now, just pacing myself.
Yes. I love that pace. The one
Hmm.
word that I just like every time I hear, I'm like, ew, but it's so important. Patience. I'm
Yeah,
like, ugh.
yeah. Temperance in the tarot deck, it's temperance, like, but it's magical. Patience is
It
actually magical.
is. I'm
Yeah,
learning to love
yeah,
it. I'm learning to love it. It's like,
yeah.
okay, you're in this space. What could you be doing outside
Hmm.
of worrying?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
How can you be preparing yourself, getting yourself ready for what it is that you're wanting to receive? Use this time
yeah,
wisely.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
There's also a flower essence, impatience.
Ooh, please share.
It's called impatience.
Of course.
Um, yes, and yeah, it helps you if you take it as a remedy. It helps
Okay.
you accept the pace of others, which is
Mm.
so important. Like
Mm.
whether you're a healer and you're working with clients, or you're a parent, or you're you're in a relationship, like a love relationship, where you always have to take the other person into account. You can't be like pushing your agenda all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, there are other things. It does other things too, but that's
Hmm.
like one of its main benefits. So I don't
Nice.
know. I just felt like I should throw that out there in case anybody wants
Thank you
to
very
try it.
much. Yes. And you said it's called
Yeah,
impatience, the name of the remedy or the
yeah.
flower essence.
It's actually a flower.
Okay.
It is a flower. Impatience. Yeah,
Wow.
but it's instead of ending in a CE, it ends in an NS. Impatience. Yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
Thank you for sharing that. I'm gonna check into that.
yeah. It's a cool flower.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
could probably use a little bit of that.
yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Anything else that's coming up for you that you like to share with the community?
Mm, uh, I don't know. I do. I just I feel a lot of I feel like pride for
Mm,
us, for all of us, like every time somebody comes in and makes an appointment to get Reiki and they've never done it before, or
mm,
maybe they've only done it once. I'm just like, congratulate yourself. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're like you're taking care of yourself. It's like we need to do more of that, I feel like. I don't know. Yeah, just more awareness. I think I just more making normalizing it more like the healing world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd love to see more of that.
Love that.
Um, yeah, I really love doing like community Reiki, like that kind of offering.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful.
I don't know. Yeah.
I love that. And remind me which days, because you do community Reiki at Maha Rose. You do community tarot and community Reiki, right?
Yeah, I mean it's not called community tarot, but
Oh, okay.
it's where we call it Tarot Tuesday.
Tarot
That's its proper
Tuesdays.
name.
Okay.
Yes. So it's at Maha Rose, 3:30 to 5:30.
Mhm.
And so it's accessible because you can just walk in. You don't have to
Okay.
have an appointment. Number one, you can make an appointment, but number two, it's 30-minute sessions.
Hmm.
So it's not going to be as costly as doing a whole 60-minute. Maybe you
Right.
don't have the time, maybe you're super busy, whatever. So it's just making it a little bit more accessible. And then, yeah, I often join the community Reiki on Fridays at Maha Rose, which is nice
Yeah.
also. Yeah.
Beautiful. Well, we'll definitely be sure to get those links into the show notes, into the description, and that
Yeah.
beautiful book you recommended.
Oh,
And what
yeah.
was the other resource? I guess, and then about impatience. I think that we'll definitely
Yes.
add that into the show notes as well. Thank you so much. This was a really great
Well, thank you
conversation.
so much. It was. It
Yeah.
was. It was great chatting with you. Yeah, I appreciate your work.
Oh, thank you likewise. So happy to have you a part of the family.
Yeah.
And we'll see you around.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.